and everyone to MuleSoft Meetup group, Mysore. And today we have the topic object store and its behavior in different deployment models. So we'll see like how object store behaves in hybrid and CloudHub and then on-prem. Okay, so I'll read out some safe harbor statement before we begin with our presentation. So both the speaker and the host are organizing this meetup in individual capacity. We are not representing our companies here. This presentation is strictly for learning purpose only and not meant for any promotional activities. So I also like presenter do not hold any responsibility. That same solution will work for your business requirements. Okay, some housekeeping. So a recording of this meetup will be uploaded to events page within 24 hours. So you can watch and make your UC and so questions you can ask at any time in the chat, make it more interactive, and give us feedback. So we'll do look at those, and we can see like people are asking for immunity testing, so we are bringing people for that. Okay, and we will have our trivia quiz at the end of this presentation. So let me we have two organizers for this meetup. So I'll introduce myself. I am Shubham Chaurasia, working as a professional integration developer in Millennium, and I have a MuleSoft certified architect and developer, MuleSoft mentor, and meetup leader. Over to you, Giri.
Yeah, thanks for joining, everyone. So, thank you, Shubham. So, myself, Giridhar, I'm working as a senior architect at Hastin. So, I take care of MuleSoft accounts. I'm certified developer and architect of both MuleSoft and AWS. That's pretty much about me. And today we have Pallavi with us. She'll walk us through the object store, and then there is a demo on watermarking as well. Yep. What do you, Pallavi? All the best.
Hey, thank you, Giridhar. Thank you, Shubham. Hi, everyone. So, this is myself, Pallavi. So, as Giridhar mentioned, I will be going over the object store part today. And to talk about myself, I'm working as technical architect as Ashton by Deloitte. And I have around 11 years of total experience in the integration space. And mainly I worked on web methods and MuleSoft in recent years. And I've been certified in MuleSoft developer. And this is about me. Okay. So the agenda for today would be, as you see here, we will dive deeper into what is object store and the different types of object store here, and how an object store behaves in each deployment models that we have in the MuleSoft setup. And also we will go over the demo on watermarking using object store. Yeah. So before we start with object store, okay, so say if in our flow, right, so we want to save anything in our flow. So we usually generally use set variables, right? So we save any data in variable for further use in our flows. In case, say, if we have to use this data across our applications, or if you have to use the state between messages. So that is not possible because this variable is deleted as the mule event gets deleted after the flow is completed, right? So here is when an object store comes into picture. Like when you want to save your data, which you want to access it between applications, and also which you want to access between the message flows. So that is when this comes into picture. So what is an object store here? So object store is a facility for storing objects, right, across mule applications, and we can actually persist it, save it, and eventually retrieve whenever we want. So how the data is stored here, an object store is using a basic key value pair. Okay. Uh, like Mule components, right? There are many components in Mule that internally uses object store. Okay, for example, we have caching. For cache, using a cache strategy, we can use object store and redelivery policy, and many others we will be seeing in the further slides. So, and this object store supports persistent and transient. So what is persistence? Persistence is the data is saved somewhere on your disk. Okay. The transient is it is saved on your memory on the memory. That's it. So by default, whenever you're configuring object store, by default it is persistent. Okay. Yeah. So how we can use this object store? There are two different ways we can connect or um, make use of this object store is using the object store connector and object store REST APIs. We will dive into deeper on when we are using connectors and when we are using REST APIs in the further slides. Okay. Now, coming to the use cases of object store. So as I mentioned, right? So object mule, many mule components internally uses object store right here, right? So while you're configuring idempotent message validator, so whenever we are using this connector, right? So this you can or we can use object store to store unique IDs. So this is like I have just mentioned few use cases. This is one of the use cases, just to give you an idea on where and all this object stores comes into the picture in our implementation part. Okay. Now, another example is like while using the redelivery policy. While we are using the redelivery policy, definitely we need to have the redelivery count in place. So to store this redelivery count, we use object store. Okay. Even in cache. So caching also, when we have to cache data, when we have to store it, when we have to persist the data, then we can use object store. Okay. Using custom caching strategy. All right. And also like in our to use our business implementations, like when we have to use some kind of store access tokens. For example, whenever if there is a scenario where we are using OAuth implementation, so there we usually use access tokens, right? So this access token is alive for about 30 to 60 minutes depending. Now, instead of going and hitting the URL and getting the access token each and every time before we hit the main URL, we can store this access token for that particular time and reuse it instead of doing more REST calls, right? So this is one way we can use. And also the watermarking that we are going to see today. So we can implement watermarking using object store. Okay. So these are few use cases that I have mentioned here. Let's dive deeper. Yeah. Now, coming to the types of object store. So there are three different types of object store here. So the two main categories is the CloudHub object store and the on-premise. So object store V1 and V2 is mainly CloudHub object store, and Mule object store is one that is for the on-premise object store here, whatever we see here in the last one. Now, so what is V1, V2, and what is Mule object store? We will see here. So V1, V2, so OS V1 and OS V2 is mainly used for CloudHub implementation. So this is an external cloud service to Mule application. It is an external cloud service that is provided. So we will be using an external to store all our data in there. Okay. And so the difference, object store V2 is the latest one, and object store V1 is the original one that came up, and it is compatible with Mule 3. So now V2 is compatible with Mule 4. Okay, so V2 is the latest one. Going forward, definitely V1 is going to deprecate, and we should be definitely using V2 in all our further implementations. Okay. So and few other differences between V1 and V2 is, so V2 is available in the same region of worker. Now worker regions, wherever we deploy our application, right? The region, so the cloud service is available in the same region of whatever the worker we deploy. But in V1, it is only available in US region. This is one of the major difference. And also the number of the configuration part. See here in V2 we have unlimited entries, so we can store a number of data, a number of key value pairs in V2. But in V1 there is a max of 1 lakh keys per application. there is a limit over here. Okay. And coming to the max value size. Now, the whatever the value size that we are storing in V2, it can go up to 10 MB per key. Okay, so we have one key value pair, the value can be up to 10 MB. Okay. Whereas in our V1, it is for per key, it is less than 1 MB, or I mean, up to 1 MB. So that is a size difference that we have. And for complete entire application, the value size should be less than 1 GB. So this is also a limitation in V1 that we have. And coming to the key, so max key length can be 256 characters in V2. Okay. Whereas in V1, it is 768 bytes. This is just the difference of the key size on the key size. Now coming to the rate limit, right? So in V2, object stored in a free version or a standard version, right? We can only access 10 transactions per second, so per app. So this is the rate limit that we have. But in the premium versions, we can get up to 100 transactions per second per app. Whereas in V1, we don't have that restrictions. So these are like the few differences between V1 and V2 that we have. Then coming to the Mule object store, this Mule object store is original on-prem based. Okay, whenever we have our applications which is on-prem based, then we can directly use Mule object store using the Mule object store connector that we have. Okay. This is, there are no much restrictions on this. It is customizable to user preferences here, and it can be in memory and persistent. Even on CloudHub, we have in memory, but it has its own limitations, right? So I will share that in the next slides. But here it can be in memory and persistent, and there is no limit on the key or the value size, and no limit on the maxed size of the store. So it can be unlimited. So this is what when it comes to object store, we need to understand and implement on based on which deployment model we are choosing in our implementation. So V2 and V1 is mainly for CloudHub implementations, and the Mule object store is for on-prem implementations. And we have its own limitations and benefits based on its usages, right? So yeah, we can go to the next slide. Yeah. So if we see here, right, where V1, V2, and Mule object store is supported by each deployment model. Okay, so object store V2 is supported only by CloudHub and not on-premise and runtime. So from on-premise, we can access the object store service, but through a REST API, not on use the corrector. So that again, we will see dive in, but mainly, yeah. So V1 and V2 is only for the CloudHub implementations, and then Mule object store is supported by CloudHub, on-prem, and runtime fabric. So in detail, we will see how each one behaves in the deployment models, right? So far, we have any questions or?
I don't think so. We have any questions so far.
Okay.
Please, yeah.
Okay. I hope things are clear. So now getting into the behavior of the object stores. Now on-prem, say we have one application and it is on-prem. We have two different ways we can use this object store. As I discussed earlier, it can be in memory and it can be persistent. So what happens if we configure it persistent? Then all our data is written to a file system, okay, which is stored in the server's disk, right? It is stored on the file system. Now, if it is in memory, then it is stored on the server's memory. Okay. Now, where there is another case where it can be a cluster on-prem. So next slide, Shloka. So whenever we have a cluster scenario where we say we have Mule runtime 1, runtime 2, runtime 3, everything is in a cluster, and you want the application to share data, if you want to share data across each application, right? Then this is achieved internally by here the data or the object store data here is shared in distributed shared memory or Hazelcast. Hazelcast is a library framework used internally by MuleSoft. Okay, so now in this case, what happens is, for example, um, if we don't have it persistent, right? If we don't have it persistent, then it will only each app in the runtime, it is stored in each memory, and it will not be shared across all the applications. So in this case, if we do it persistent, then it will be shared in a distributed shared memory where any application in any runtime can be accessed, right? It can access the data from the object store. So another thing here is, so now whatever we configure here in the runtime is overridden by the cluster data grid configuration. While we configure a cluster, whatever configuration we give, if it is in memory or persistent, that configuration is taken at the end, not by the individual app configuration. So if it is whenever we are doing persistent, we can use JDBC. In this case, we can configure a JDBC configurations to store data here. And yeah, again, the OS data or the object store data is shared by same app deployed to multiple servers in the cluster. So yeah, this is one case wherein whenever we are using a cluster, we should just think like it is stored on a DSM. Okay. Okay. Go on to the next slide. Okay, so the how it works on a CloudHub. Now, whenever we object store is configured in an application and deployed onto a CloudHub, again there are two ways. So one thing is it can be in memory and persistent. So what are the limitations if it is in memory is, now we have this app deployed in two workers, say. So the data cannot be shared amongst the workers, right? It will be specific to each. But if it is persistent, then we will be using the object store service that we discussed earlier, the cloud service, wherein whenever here, right, in this case, in the CloudHub case, so the object store service, the data is accessed through REST APIs. Okay, internally, even we don't have to do anything externally. Now we can use an object store connector and implement it and deploy it on a CloudHub. But internally, it uses REST APIs to connect to object store services. But if the same application is deployed on a runtime, on-prem, right, then it will be stored in files. So this is what happens internally. The Mule takes care of this. Okay. Yeah. So in this CloudHub case, as I said, we will be using object store services. Okay. So in persistent, right, in case of persistent, so OS data is stored in Amazon DynamoDB here. Okay, and it is shared across multiple workers. It is not limited to individual workers. It is shared across multiple workers, and the maximum entries is unlimited. So we don't have any limit on the VS object store 2, right? Version 2. So if we want to see our keys, right, whatever we have, so we can go to any point platform, runtime manager, and select the application and see the object store. In under object store, you can see whatever keys are saved. Okay. But whereas if we don't select persistent in our while during our implementation and we have transient form here in this case, then what happens is, so the object store data is stored in worker's memory. It won't use object store service, one thing, and the data is not shared across same app to multiple workers. It is not shared across. And also we can't see any data or like whatever keys that we have, we can't see in our anypoint platform. So this is how an object store works on-prem and a single app when it is single and it is when it is a standalone how it works, and it is a cluster how it works, and CloudHub how it works. So these are the three different behaviors I can say. And coming to the next slide. So here, suppose say we have one application, okay, we have configured and it is deployed on CloudHub. It's a hybrid application. One is one application, and there is another application running on a on-prem, and this application has to access data that is stored by app2 in this case in a object store service. So say we have a scenario like this and we need to access data. This is definitely possible. So this can be achieved by explicitly using the REST APIs. Okay, so we can use a REST call to store and retrieve data to the object store v2 that is running. Okay, so in a hybrid scenario, so this is a way we can access data from something that is stored in the CloudHub, stored in the object store service. Okay. So any questions so far on the behavior?
No, I think we don't have any questions. Please feel free to ask your questions in the chat anytime. Please go ahead, Pallavi.
Okay. So now this is something last part of our presentation here. Now, how do we access? So I was telling an app deployed on-prem can access object store version to our object store service, right? So we can do it using the REST APIs. Okay. So, and one more thing to note here is this REST API it supports only object store v2. We can't do this with object store v1. That is one thing to be noted. And this object store service can be accessed by Mule and non-Mule applications. So it need not be a Mule application. So we can use this REST APIs and any application can access this. So so how is it accessed? Using the org ID, env ID, and the object store specific client ID, client secret. So we can use this. And REST APIs can be used for, it can be like as the same way how we can store and retrieve, right? So at the similar way how, maybe in the demo I will show you what are the functionality that we have. We can usually, we have to store the data, retrieve the data, delete, retrieve keys, update. So all this can be achieved using REST APIs in this case. Okay, so I think I've just covered on the high level what is an object store, when the object store comes into a picture, and what are the use cases of object store, where and all we use it, or internally where the Mule connectors have used it, and also the different types of object store here, like so object store when during cloud implementations what we can do, during like on-prem implementations what we can do. So this different types of object store and how object store behaves in each deployment model. So any questions so far, or we can go for the demo?
We have one. We have one from Suchitra. like when we access OS v2 data using REST API from within an app deployed in CloudHub, we will get data in encoded format.
It, okay, to be frank, I don't know. I don't think it is an encoded format, but I'm not sure on the exact. It is. I don't think it is an encoded format. I think we can retrieve data as is.
Yeah. So other part of the question of this is like, is the behavior same for an on-prem app?
I didn't get that part. Behavior same on an
It just mean like, are we getting an encoded format similarly
no,
as
no,
in?
no. No, it's not an encoded format. Whatever is saved, we retrieve the same data.
All right. Does this answers your query, Suchitra? We have one more from Yogesh. Like, using object store APIs, can't we create key value
Yeah,
here?
it is stored in a key value pair.
Okay. We have one from Faizan. Like, can we also store data using REST API in object store, or we can retrieve?
We can store.
Yeah. So we can store as well as retrieve
Retrieve.
using REST
Yeah.
APIs. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So if you want, do we have any more questions, or we can proceed to the demo? Okay, I think we don't have any more questions. So yeah,
Shubham, I
you
think I'll drop off and rejoin through Safari so that I can share my screen, right?
yeah, sure. Please.
Okay.
Let's wait for Pallavi to rejoin. She will share her screen for the demo. Meanwhile, I'll share some links.
Okay. Am I audible here?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
Is it very bad? Is it visible or how is it, Shubham?
Yeah, please let us know like if it's properly visible, because we have a problem like the speaker cannot maximize the screen
Is it
at
too
her
small?
at her end. Yeah, no, it's visible. You can continue. It's good. Yeah,
It's fine.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. Here, the, so the demo plan is for the watermarking. Okay. So how we can implement watermarking using object store is what we are trying to show here. And before that, I would want to show the object store configuration. So whenever we want to use an object store, right? So say we can use an object store connector. Whenever I was telling, so we can use an object store connector. This is what I mean. So we can search for object store, and these are all the functionalities that we have here, wherein we can clear the object store. We can check what is present, and we can remove the key. And we can retrieve the value using the key. We can retrieve all the values and retrieve all keys and store a value for a particular key. So these are all the functionalities that we have. Then whenever we use anything, so we would want to configure on where. Okay. So the object store configuration, if we go to here. So this is what I was telling. So by default, it is persistent. So here in this case, since I'm using it here in my like embedded runtime, right? So all the data is stored in a file. Okay. So there is another functionality we have here is time to live. Okay. So time to live is something like we are defining the time of the value key value pair to live. Just a minute. Yeah. Okay, so we are defining how long this key value can, how long this value can live in this object store, right? So what if you give, say, for example, 30 minutes. So what will happen? So now some value is stored in a particular key. After 30 minutes, this value is deleted or removed for that particular key. Where we can use this, as I was telling, one of the use case that we have implemented is like for access management, right? So access token. So how so as I was telling, this access token is can be active for about 50 to 60 minutes. So after that we have to hit the rest URL to get a new access token and save it. So what we can do is we can set it as like time to live as 30 minutes to be on a safer side, 30 to 40 minutes on a safer side, and then we know that it is expired. So when there is no value, then we can go and get the new access token and save it. So that way we can use this. So here is a configuration part that I wanted to tell. Yeah. Here what I have done is, so what we are going to do, for example, so the scenario what I wanted to explain here is, say we have some new records coming into a DB. Say here we have configured a product DB. Suppose whenever there is a new product added to this DB, okay, whenever there's a new entry added to the DB, we need to process that data, and we can do it like here I'm not doing anything, but say we have a scenario where we need to process data and send it to some end system. Okay, in that case, how we can use this object store watermarking, right? So we don't want to get all the data. We just have to get only the latest data that we have got into the DB and process it. So in that case, watermarking is very much required to understand what records are processed and what is not processed. Okay. So here, say in my DB, I have only one product table. So, and I have only one entry. Okay. And what I'm doing here is, first I'm trying to retrieve the value. Okay. So let me show you the configurations. So this is an object store retrieve, which retrieves the value. Here I have mentioned the key. So if I have saved any value for this key, then I will get the value from this. So, and also I have configured the which data like object store I should use to retrieve this key. Okay. And there is also something called default value. If this is null, if the key is null, right, the default value return will be 0. Okay. That is one thing. First I'm trying to get some value. Okay. And based on that value, here I'm trying to get all the products that is greater than that value that is stored. Where I'm storing the, say suppose we have, we need to process the first record. So first by default we'll get it as 0, right? Then we will get in this, for this query, we will get the first record that we have here. Okay. Now what we'll do next is we'll go ahead, process that entry that we have got with whatever we want. And then what I'm doing is I'm storing the maximum of the product ID. Here we have something called product ID. This is the primary key that I'm using. So based on this, I will be storing this product ID here, just to tell that, okay, product ID is done. So whatever next comes in, we need to process that in the next cycle. So now again, when the scheduler runs in, right? So here we will get the value as 1 because we have stored the value 1 here. And then it is for the next rows, it is processed and saved again. So I hope you got that. We will see how it goes. So here, my service is running and deployed. So I'll just back here. Okay. Now when you retrieve, so the product ID is 0 in this case. This is the first run. So we have not stored anything. Okay. One more thing that I wanted to tell here is, so here I've just enriched the data. See, whatever key, so whatever value we get, right, it is usually ideally stored in the payload of the mule event. But in this case, I have given a target variable to enrich it. So the target variable I've saved, I want to save the value in a product ID variable. So we are saving it there. Okay. So that is where we see the variable here. Okay. Then we select data that is greater than 1. So we get, it will just take a little longer. Let's give it a minute. Somehow this DB that I'm using, the calls take a little longer. Yeah. So now here I got one record, whatever we have here in the DB. Okay. And now I am processing it. So here I'm just not doing anything here, just put for the demo purpose. And now I'm storing this value. What I'm storing, if you see, I'm storing the max of the payload product ID. Okay, so suppose there are 10 records that is retrieved here from the DB, right? So max of this will be 10, right? Product ID. So I'm just storing whatever is the maximum value, so that we can process only records after that. So yeah, it is stored. Now, suppose I add another record here. So yeah, I'll just give some random. Okay, I'll save this. Okay. So now it is saved as 3 because earlier I had one record and deleted it. So this, but automatically it is given the next up number, that is 3. Now we need to process only the new record and not the old record in this case. So yeah. So now here, if you see, we had saved the product ID value as 1. So we have got it, whatever we have stored here earlier in the earlier run. Now, all right. So if you see, we have got only the new record here, and then store the max. So this is how we can process only the fresh records using watermarking, using the object store scenario. Okay. Any questions on this?
Do we have any questions? Mic is enabled, like you can ask anytime.